Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into some seriously ancient, hidden rules of wealth. You know, we live in this world that's constantly screaming at us to show off every bit of success, but what if the actual secret to keeping your money is doing the exact opposite? Today we're unpacking a masterclass in financial survival. We're talking about a 500-year-old playbook that reveals how the world really works.
So, let me ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. What if you suddenly got, say, 5 crores tomorrow, just totally out of the blue? Who is the absolute first person you'd tell? Your family? Maybe your relatives? Your best friend? Well, if your answer is yes to any of those, you've actually already lost. That totally natural instinct we all have to share our good fortune, it's a fatal trap. What feels like a huge blessing in that exact moment can turn into a nightmare real quick.
And that trap? That's exactly what the Italian philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli warned us about more than 500 years ago. He basically said, look, fortune might favor the brave, but it absolutely abandons those who aren't prepared. Because the truth is, sudden wealth doesn't actually change who you are. Scratch that, it exposes who you are. It magnifies your weaknesses, your bad habits, your blind spots. And honestly, worst of all, it creates this massive gravitational pull that drags everyone around you right into your orbit.
All right, let's dive into this. Section 1. The Curse of Sudden Wealth. To figure out how to protect our money, we first have to understand just how insanely easy it is to destroy it. The reality for instant millionaires is, frankly, terrifying. When you look at studies of lottery winners and people who come into sudden, massive wealth, there's this pattern that repeats every single time. The rise is incredibly rapid, but the fall is just as brutal. We're talking more than half ending up divorced within a few years. Rampant substance addiction, bankruptcy, deep depression. They lose their friends and their mental peace way before the actual cash runs out. Why does this happen? Well, it's because people mistake having money for having actual financial wisdom. The really hard truth here is that keeping wealth is 100 times harder than getting it.
So, moving right along to Section 2, the power of stealth. If you actually want to keep your wealth, you absolutely have to master the weapon of silence.
This is a strategy known as stealth wealth. Basically, it means owning immense assets and serious power, but from the outside, you just look like you're living a completely ordinary, modest life. You might wear simple clothes, drive a totally normal car, but behind the scenes, your influence is massive. Now, I know modern culture tells you to go broadcast all your wins on Instagram, right? Show everyone how crushing it you are. But Machiavelli's rule is the exact opposite. Visible power breeds jealousy. Period. Broadcasting your wealth literally only invites enemies and gives people a reason to test your boundaries. The absolute second you flash your wealth, you expose your biggest vulnerability. History gives us a pretty wild comparison here. On one hand, you've got Jack Whitaker, just an ordinary guy who won a $315 million lottery. That's about 2,600 crores. He blasted his wealth everywhere, literally handed out cash to strangers, bought houses for friends, and became this massive media darling. But guess what? When the cameras eventually left, his entire life collapsed. His wife left him, his friends vanished, and tragically, his teenage granddaughter died of a drug overdose funded by that exact same money. He even said later on that he wished he'd just torn the ticket up. Now flip that and look at the Rothschilds. They built this colossal banking empire back in the 18th century. They financed literal wars and kings, yet they stayed quiet, modest, and basically invisible. They let their influence speak way louder than their lifestyle. Remember, anonymity is hands down your strongest armor.
Which brings us to Section 3, building invisible defensive structures. Because the big question is, how do we actually pull this off and protect ourselves in a world that is just so obsessed with visibility?
It all comes down to structure. The absolute first person you should tell about your newfound wealth, it shouldn't be your mom or your brother or your best buddy. It should be an attorney. Seriously. True wealth isn't directly owned. It's structured. You want to build this invisible fortress using trust to hide your name and holding companies to shield your assets. Let the professionals handle your affairs quietly in the background, while your public, day-to-day life remains completely unchanged. The best disguise for success is just total normalcy.
And a huge part of that normalcy is keeping your momentum going. Do not quit your job just to sit around and be idle. Working keeps your mind sharp, and more importantly, it keeps your ego humble. Machiavelli totally called this. He warned that idleness makes you soft and super vulnerable. I mean, look at guys like Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett. Buffett is in his 90s, and he's still going to work every single day. They get that focus as a literal form of power. Now, if your current job is absolutely suffocating you, sure, leave it on your own terms. But never stop building something. Idleness just makes you a sitting duck for impulsive, stupid spending.
All right, Section 4. crushing the internal rebellion. So your external fortress is up, your daily habits are locked in. Now we have to tackle the most silent killer of wealth out there.
Now, what's really fascinating here is this one single number, 20%. When your bank account is absolutely flush with cash, a credit card bill might just look like a tiny, annoying little nuisance. But listen, compound interest moves way faster than greed. A 20% interest rate on a credit card, that will chew through a treasure chest faster than a thief in the night. No joke.
High-interest debt is quite literally an internal rebellion happening right inside your fortress walls. Machiavelli always advised kings to wipe out internal dangers way before even looking at external threats. You have to be absolutely ruthless about paying off those high-interest loans before you even think about investing a single rupee anywhere else. Think about it. Eliminating a 20% debt is basically a guaranteed, risk-free 20% return. Now, if you've got some super low-interest debt like 2 or 3%, okay, that's a bit different. You can strategically hang on to that if your cash can earn a better return somewhere else. But you've got to crush that high-interest debt immediately to secure your mental peace.
Now for Section 5, the emotional war of wealth. Your fortress is solid. Your debts are totally cleared. But get ready, because the toughest battle is actually still coming. And it doesn't come from the stock market or the taxman. It comes straight from the emotions of the people closest to you.
Look, when you level up in life, people just naturally start comparing their behind the scenes to your highlight reel, and that breeds some really quiet, toxic resentment. To survive this emotional war, you've got to remember this golden rule. Never, ever loan money to friends or family. Just don't do it. The second you do, you're turning a relationship into a business transaction. If they can't pay it back, resentment builds up. If they do pay it back, they still feel weird and indebted to you. You literally lose both ways. Instead, if someone you love truly needs help, be generous. But give it once as a pure gift with absolutely zero expectations and make it crystal clear that this is a one-time thing. You have to establish those boundaries so you don't just become everybody's personal ATM.
To put into perspective just how incredibly dangerous this emotional war can be, let's look at a massive number. $300 million. That's roughly 2,500 crores. That astronomical number, that is exactly how much boxing legend Mike Tyson made during his career. But get this, within 10 years, despite all the crazy stuff like buying mansions and literal pet Bengal tigers, he was totally bankrupt. How does that even happen? Well, his fortune wasn't just drained by wild shopping sprees or bad investments. It was drained by the countless hands constantly reaching out for a handout. He ended up financially carrying dozens of people just out of a heavy sense of guilt. Wealth has a funny way of revealing who actually loves you and who just loves what you can buy them. To protect your wealth, you kind of have to be like the sun, right? Warm and generous from far away, but completely untouchable up close.
Moving into Section 6, protecting the principal capital. These are the final, absolute must-do defensive strategies to make sure your wealth doesn't just survive your lifetime, but actually lasts for generations.
We call this the golden rule of capital. You have to treat your wealth like it's an orchard. You can absolutely eat the fruit, which in this case is the interest, but you must never ever cut down the actual trees. That's your principal capital. Eating into your principal is like burning the foundation of your own house just to get a little bit warm for a night. There was actually this family in California who won a massive lottery. They bought the huge mansions, the luxury cars, the whole shebang. And they lost every single penny of it in 2 years. They didn't lose it because of bad luck. They lost it because they kept eating the principal. A wise ruler spends money to stay rich, not to look rich.
So how do you actually make sure you're only ever eating the fruit? Well, you find your freedom number. Let's do some super quick, actionable math here. First, figure out what your ideal annual living expenses are. Let's just say, for example, it's 20 lakh rupees. Okay, step 2, multiply that number by 25. The result you get in this scenario, 5 crore, is what we call your hidden throne. Once you hit that exact calculated number, you can live entirely off the yield, the interest, forever. And the principal? It just sits there, completely untouched and totally safe.
Now, once you've secured that capital, you have to bulletproof it against disaster by diversifying. You spread that empire out across land, businesses, gold, and yeah, definitely keep a little bit of liquid cash just for fun money. Because hey, a king should definitely enjoy his reign. Think about the Medici family. They were the most powerful banking dynasty in 15th century Italy. And they survived for centuries precisely by splitting their wealth across all sorts of different assets and even different countries. They didn't just want to be rich for a little while. They structured things to become financially immortal.
So as we wrap up this explainer, there's one core truth I really want you to internalize. Wealth is not noise. True wealth is silence.
It's about actual power, not pageantry. The ultimate end goal of having money isn't to flex on your neighbors or get validation from strangers on the internet. The real goal, it's buying your own sovereignty. It's buying absolute mental peace and building a rock-solid legacy that's going to outlive you. Sure, getting rich in the first place might rely on a tiny bit of luck, but staying rich, that is an absolute war of discipline.
I'm going to leave you with this final, incredibly provocative thought. What is seen becomes a target, and what remains hidden rules. Surviving wealth takes incredible foresight, super rigid structure, and above all else, absolute silence. So build your fortress, fiercely protect your capital, and never, ever tell the world where your true crown is hidden. Just ask yourself, when your fortune finally does arrive, will you actually have the discipline to disappear?